Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in. I literally just finished having a really awesome conversation with one of my friends, Adam Madrzyk. He's actually somebody who I haven't known for very long. I met him this summer, but he's a young dude and he's doing really well in cinematography these days. And he's just generally a pretty self-aware guy who's really creative and he's really open-minded and he's always just a really good person to talk to. So I invited him to have a conversation on this podcast. He is a really busy guy, so it was pretty tough to actually schedule something, but we finally managed to pull it off. In general, I mostly wanted to learn more about his own creative projects and his industry and kind of how he got into it, but we got onto a few other different growth related topics as well. So I think you will enjoy the episode. Wherever you are listening, please subscribe. It just helps me get this in front of more people's ears. And I'm also going to have a lot of pretty awesome guests in the new year, as well as be releasing some meditation resources. So stay tuned for that. And without further ado, I will get this episode started. That's funny, man. That was a question I had written down here.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, because of myself noticing that.
Yeah.
Do you find that is like annoying where you can't just relax and watch a movie and just chill and enjoy it?
It's easier if I'm watching it with like someone with my like significant other Tori. If I'm watching the movie with her, it's like way easier because I'm just like enjoying it, just in terms of like relaxing and enjoying something else with someone. But on my own, I'm either dissecting it or depends what mindset I'm in. But like oftentimes I'll be like, oh, like that's really interesting. I really like the color grade of that. I really like the camera movement, or like that was different, or I really like the sound of that. Or if like it's usually if stuff stands out, but if it's just like I don't know, if it's just like a normal film that's like pretty traditional, then usually I won't break it down that much.
Yeah.
Unless I'm really fascinated by it, but I try to pull myself out of it. But it's hard though, because like you want to learn from these other filmmakers and kind of see how they do their art and how they even got to that level and what makes them them. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just gonna start it here.
Okay.
I'm probably gonna start it before that and include that little rant. But
sounds good.
Yeah, thanks for doing an episode, man.
Yeah. Are we rolling?
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah, I always just start it whenever we start talking because sometimes you just miss some really good shit, and I really don't want to miss the good stuff ever.
Right.
But yeah, so I guess I met you this summer.
Yeah.
Chris has honestly been telling me about you for a couple of years now, I think, being like, yeah, you must know this Adam guy from London. You must know him.
Yeah.
So I felt like I already knew your name. Like, I heard it so many times in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess Chris was doing that shoot up in Muskoka, and I drove you up there, and we got chatting.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of a funny connection. Like, you were just mentioning that you bought a snowboard off me when you were like way younger.
Yeah, I remember you were in Fresh Veggies, right?
I wasn't in Fresh Veggies.
Are you sure?
I don't think I was. I might have had like one shot in that.
Okay.
That was kind of a video Andy made right before I started snowboarding with him a lot.
But
I was in all the other ones with Andy.
So that was like, Fresh Veggies was like honestly a big inspiration of mine.
Yeah.
I remember buying that video at the board shop in London and watching that with like my two close friends, Julian and Josh at the time. And we would like watch Fresh Veggies every winter, right? Like as the first snowfall happened, we would like watch Fresh Veggies and other like snowboard videos, but specifically that video, and kind of just like get hyped up for like the next snowboard season. And I like started my own like production company at the time called Mad Productions, which I was like, I don't know, I was in like grade 7 at the time, and I made like stickers and I wanted to make t-shirts and all this stuff. And like that video kind of inspired me to do that in the first place and start shooting my own little videos. And I don't know, it was inspiring to see that that like Andrew was able to like make this own video with his friends and then sell it locally and like live off of his own art. Yeah, so that's like, that was kind of like that kind of like clicked things for me. And I realized that like not only you can like build longevity in this career, but you could like still have fun while doing it and it could inspire others. I don't know.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Dude, I find it so cool hearing that story from you. I wasn't even going to bring that up, but
Yeah.
shout out to Andy.
Yeah.
Because,
I haven't met him yet, so Andy, if you're listening to this, I'd love to finally meet you, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
he'll listen to it for sure because I'll tell him that this is in it. He's
Yeah.
been listening to most of them so far.
Sick.
But yeah, that's such a cool story for me because Andy is just like a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
And he just made videos because he liked it. He actually, I'm pretty sure, like, he could correct me if he wanted, but I'm pretty sure he started making videos because he wanted to be doing better in snowboarding, and there was no one else who was going to make the video for him.
Right.
So he literally did it just to like solve a simple problem of like getting himself seen.
Yeah.
And then he ended up breaking his back and not being able to snowboard much at all.
I think that was in that video. I think I saw like where that happened or something like that. Maybe it would have been afterwards, but
Maybe.
he had a crazy bail in that video. Still remember where it was.
Yes. Actually, yeah, that
Yeah.
was part of it.
Yeah.
That one rail where he hits the,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
But like all of the music he curated in that, and just I don't know, that video is flawless. Like even looking back at it now, like sure it's like shot on DV and it's like a different quality than we're used to now, but that's also part of the charm. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know. I just
definitely.
love that video. It's amazing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just a good friend of mine. And
Yeah.
you're obviously doing really cool shit with cinematography now. And it all
Thank
started from watching Andy's video.
Yeah.
That's so funny, but like it all comes full circle at some point, you know?
Yeah.
Cool. So then from there, I guess I don't really know the story of what you got up to in high school or whatnot, but I remember you telling me that you came to Toronto and kind of got involved with the creator class.
Yeah.
And they're like a really big deal now. Like I go to their events. I saw you at one of their events recently, and they're like so inspiring, you know? Like I try and go to all those just to get more exposure to people who are doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
And it seems like you got in there just at the perfect time when it was like a brand new operation.
Yeah. I mean, like that was interesting. In grade 11, I remember like really wanting to do my own short film, and I was doing like before that I was doing like skateboard videos in like at the end of elementary school and like middle school, and then going into high school, I thought I was going to transition to like photography. So I thought I was going to be like a National Geographic photographer, and then all these things, and then I realized a friend of mine was like, "Oh, like I see that you're taking photos, but like, would you shoot my dance video?" And I was like, "Sure." So I like started doing his dance videos, and then I got into like the dance community of London, and I realized that you can like make a little bit of like side income on that after like I never really experienced that. I noticed that through like Andy's video, but I never experienced that myself until that I started doing those videos. And then after that, I was like, oh, but I'm really interested in like movie making and short films. So I made my first short film, Awaken, in grade 11. After like I was working just like a part-time job in high school, and I like saved all that money from that job, bought myself a camera, built the budget for this film, and then made it. And then like when I finished that film, I used that film to submit it to Ryerson, and I submitted it to like this Canon contest that they just had online with like some other photos that I was taking at the time. And from that, I got into Ryerson, and I won this like Canon contest that they were gonna like screen my short film and show this photography work in Toronto. And I came to Toronto like it was like I think 2 weeks before I was coming to Ryerson, and they put me up at the Shangri-La, which was insane.
Wow.
Like I was like, whoa, this is
Not
like
bad.
this crazy welcome to Toronto. Like it was crazy. And then they were showing like the short film and like some of my photography pieces at the Much Media space, like right next to the Bell Media building on Queen Street. And I came with my brother, and my twin brother, and we just kind of like, I had like an insane experience of what it's like to be a creative in Toronto. And and at that event, that's where I met like the founders of the creator class. And they were just starting the creator class. They were telling me like, oh, like we're just starting this new thing in collaboration with Canon. It's like called the creator class. Like follow us on Instagram right now. So I followed them. And then I remember like halfway through first year at Ryerson, I saw like on Instagram that they were looking for an intern. So I applied, and I was like, I don't know if you remember me from the Canon contest, but like here I am, blah, 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 let's meet up. And they remembered me, and I came in for an interview, and then, yeah, that's where I got the job.
Wow.
And like they were just starting then, so they were starting to do like, they were really trying to push the creator class and what they wanted to do, and they were doing like all their branded docs with like Canon, and they were all being distributed through Hypebeast and High Cinematographer and all these like big outlets. And since it was so new, like they wanted to collaborate with everyone, and everyone wanted to collaborate with them. And being their first intern, they didn't really know kind of what responsibilities that entailed, so they treated me like a full-time employee and like let me shoot stuff and like be beat camera or like take the lead on shooting some projects. So I got to like work with Wonder Girl and some really interesting people that I looked up to pretty early on, and like build my portfolio just because I was like the first one in the door, and like it was just, I guess, lucky timing, I guess. Yeah.
That's such an amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, I can only imagine how cool it would be to be involved in some of the stuff that they're doing.
Totally, but it all started from like that short film and this one photograph that I like still have as my background on my phone, because it was kind of like those two moments were like two pivotal moments that in my career and just in my time as a creative, that I don't know how different things would have been without those moments, but I think they would have been pretty drastically different. But it's crazy how like one thing can lead to this like spider web of other things down the road. So
Big time.
yeah.
Big time. That's one thing that in the world of creatives and kind of your industry, like, I think it's the people who are just creating stuff on their own on the side all the
Yeah.
time who things just seem to kind of like shoot to the sky for.
Mhm.
Like I consider Chris Evans kind of a good example of that.
Yeah.
Hate to pump that guy's tires too much, but he's just doing cool shit on the side, and he'll take projects where it'll be more about a passion project than about business sometimes, just because he really wants to learn from the experience.
Totally.
And things, not just him, like him, you, a lot of other people I know, but it's like they're just constantly creating, and they look at it more as like a passion project than a business. And it seems to be like things just really work out very well for those kinds of people in that industry.
Totally. You have to know like, now I've learned to know like when and where to say yes to projects, I think. And scope out those like passion projects, but still like divide the business with that. But starting out, it was like, yeah, purely passion, until you do like too much of that, and you kind of have to scale back and figure out what's important to you and what's your brand and what work you want to start promoting and like filtering as like that being your visual identity. So
So
yeah,
on
it's changed about a little bit since then.
Yeah, for sure. So on that note, when it comes to like where you are right now,
Yeah.
with having like a lot of, I'm sure you get probably more offers for projects than you even can handle. How do you determine what projects to say yes to and how to say no, and which ones to say no to?
It's, I don't know if I've like, I think that's an art form in itself, and like I don't know if I figured that out. And I've listened to a ton of podcasts too, just based on that like very topic of these like cinematographers or directors that are at the top of their game, and how they choose which project they want to do and which they don't. And it's never, I always want to be doing projects, and if I could say yes to everything, I 100% would. But it's just a matter of like what type of media or what type of visuals I want to be pushing out at that given moment. And sometimes it's like I want to be known as like the film guy, and I want to be shooting 16mm film, and I want to brand myself as that guy. So that's kind of been one approach that I've taken this year, was stepping back and seeing some of my favorite work by some of my idols, and breaking it down kind of like what they're doing. And one of those things was they were shooting on 16mm film. And so I was like, okay, how can I implement that in my work and learn how to do that, and kind of like take advantage of having that skill set and start putting it towards these like fashion films or passion projects, or even like paid commercial projects. Yeah, and I was kind of just trying to implement that within my work. And then I would take the work that I would see like complements that nicely, or would like push me creatively or professionally in a new territory.
Yeah.
So like commercials was one thing that I wanted to like beef up and have a lot of like cool commercials and different commercials on my like portfolio. one thing I'm lacking now is music videos. So I think my next goal is to like do more music videos and develop that side of my portfolio. Um, so yeah, it's constantly kind of being self-reflective on your work, trying to figure out what visual narrative you want to be telling within your work. If that's like shooting on film, if that's like doing commercials, if that's doing narrative like short films, um, and then going like head first and trying to figure out how you can do more of that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I never really have thought about it that way. What do you think? Like, what do you like about film?
What do I do? What do I like?
What is it that you like about film so much?
It's just a different. It's a different aesthetic. It's like it's a different way of approaching filmmaking entirely, because you don't have infinite amount of like you don't have infinite amount of film to shoot. So you'll have like 11 minutes per 400 feet, and usually for those projects, like for those passion projects, you might have 1,200 feet, which equates to like roughly 33 minutes. So instead of having like one card that can shoot 33 minutes, and having like 3 of those cards and having a hard drive that you can constantly dump to, you only have those 33 minutes. So instead of getting 10 takes, you get 1 take. So it's like you really have to start doing the math like as you're shooting, and figure out exactly what you need to make that project happen, and what you need in the edit, and kind of edit as you're shooting. Whereas with digital, like you could shoot infinitely just based off of your card space. You're obviously still limited like with your schedule, but it's a lot more um, it's a lot more free in terms of that. So that's one aspect. Another way with film is you have to like expose it properly and read light. So you like have a light meter and you spot like exactly what your highlights, midtones, and shadows are, and kind of like figure out your exposure based off of those readings, and then apply that to whatever scene you have. So it's like on a technical approach is completely different. You're not looking on your monitor and being like, "Oh, that looks like properly exposed." You have to like tangibly figure out exactly what your readings are and then apply that to your camera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of post production in that, or are you trying to kind of nail it right on the head before you get to that stage, basically with film?
I always try to like figure out nail it on the set.
Yeah,
because
I'm sure
you get
you
the best
can't.
results that way. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, like on a movie set, though, wouldn't they have tons of film though?
They would have tons of film, yeah.
Okay,
Like,
so but that's obviously a project with a massive budget. Like it's a different situation.
yeah, but even then, like even the biggest budgets, like they're still somewhat confined with what they're able to do, how much stock they're able to shoot just based off of like scheduling to, like their post production schedule. Like they might have to get a cut done by a certain amount of time, and you have to count also by like after you shoot your film, you have to like send it off to a lab, then they have to process it and scan it, and that takes some time too. So it's a lot more thinking and a lot more scheduling just to shoot on film, which seems inconvenient, but the final product is just that much more beautiful. I don't know.
For sure. Oh, I just wanted to kind of hear your take on it because
Yeah.
I personally think film is super cool. Like I first started shooting photography on film cameras when I
Yeah.
was in high school. And then I got like a nice DSLR,
Yeah.
and I thought it would be revolutionary. I thought it would change the way I look at everything.
Mhm.
And it kind of made photography boring for me, to be
Yeah.
totally honest. I didn't really like photography after I was like playing around with that for a long time.
Mhm.
And then I picked up one of my old film cameras and I got back into it, and I was like, this is so much more fun. Everything's kind of a mystery. The tones come out in a way that you don't get to decide it.
Mhm.
It's like way more of an artistic process. Not that I like want to paint this crazy picture of being like an art snob, because
Yeah.
I'm just a dude who takes photos when I like to take photos. But like it's just way cooler that way. And like when you're watching movies and stuff that are shot on film, those like soft pink tones of like the sky when it's film, or
Yeah.
just you can tell, right? Not everyone can tell, but when you've like stared at enough film in your life, you know exactly when it's shot on film.
Totally. Yeah, it just has a different vibe and a different quality to it. I don't know. I've like always been shooting film in terms of stills for I don't know, like since high school. and I like made an effort from grade 12 to like my last year in university to shoot a disposable camera every like 3 weeks or month. So I have like all these rolls and all these photos of my experiences from grade 12 all the way to like fourth year, and some this year as well, and last year. But those photos, like, I could never recreate with my iPhone. I can never recreate it with my DSLR. They're just like those candid moments that you can't recreate, and that, like, I don't know, they just have like an interesting quality to them. They're not perfect, but that's what makes them unique.
Yeah, totally. I think film is kind of making a resurgence right now.
Totally.
Like,
I
it
think people
definitely
are
is
realizing that.
in
Yeah.
video for sure.
Yeah.
I kind of want to talk to you about your short film project.
Yeah.
I wish I was just recording when we were talking about it before, but all these dilemmas that you're kind of talking about with it are so interesting to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a guy who's kind of trying to brainstorm ways to get involved in more creative projects, it's really cool to hear your process and everything. So I don't know if you just want to take it from here and just
Yeah.
kind of introduce your project and what you're doing with it and how it's been so far.
Yeah. So the project is called Guyon. And it's a short film about the first African American to go to space. And it was like my final project at Ryerson, and I collaborated with my good friend Sigi, who helped me write it and directed the project and produced it with me and edited it with me, and we kind of joined forces together to make this film as good as we possibly can make it. But it was also like one of the most challenging projects I've ever done in my life. Starting out, like, how the project started was that I was tasked to make this thesis film at school, and I really wanted to take advantage of that opportunity and do something great, and really not only like flex myself creatively to push the envelope, but I kind of also wanted to push the envelope of what students at Ryerson were delivering every year. And Sigi felt the same way. Originally, he had a completely different project in mind that he was going to do for his own, and I had a different script written. But then, after like researching NASA's history, I discovered Guyon's Wikipedia page, and after doing like more research, I realized that there was like a lot of missing gaps on like who he was as a kid growing up, what his family life was like, and it was kind of like the only thing I could find on him was just his NASA career. And I was so fascinated by just that like missing information there, and I was so fascinated just to like see what he was like, and I was fascinated that no one really like has approached the story yet. There's a lot of things that were like that like right away piqued my interest. So I like went on Amazon and I bought like this book that was like the only thing I could find was like this like 80-page bibliography, or not bibliography, it was like an 80-page like grade school book on him. And it was like coming from like Arizona, this used books that came from like a used bookstore.
Wow. Couldn't even find a new copy.
Yeah, I couldn't. There was, I don't know if they even still sell new copies of that. But it was like, yeah, a grade school book that like all the pages were faded. There was like coffee stains on it. And even that book, like there was a bit more information than I saw on the Wikipedia page, but there's still so much missing information. And I was just so fascinated, like how could someone achieve such a like legendary and remarkable thing, and achieve such greatness, but then and be like such an inspiring figure, but have so little written on his life. So then it just kept interesting me a bit more. So we finally were able to get in touch with Guyon, like the actual astronaut. And once we like found his contact information, and we called this number, and we were like, hi, like we'd love to speak to Mr. Bluford. We're super inspired by his story, like all the stuff we've been doing research. And he's like, yeah, you're speaking to him right now. And we're like, holy shit, like we're speaking to a real astronaut right now. It's crazy. Yeah, and then that kind of, he told us to call him back next week, and then we called him back, and that kind of spun out to 5 other hour-long conversations that we that we had like over the next couple weeks after that, and then we wrote our script based off of just our conversations.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not bad. And then he obviously had to approve the script.
Yeah, so after we got in touch with him, he asked us like kind of what our project was and all this stuff. And after he approved us even making this film, the conversations were just like regular conversations. Were kind of like, what was your family life like? What was the conversation with your dad? Like, how would that take place? And we're really trying to find those like human moments that were missing in his bibliography, and in his Wikipedia page and all that stuff. So after we sent him the script and all that stuff, he's totally on board and was super open, and it's so inspiring to just like be able to work under an astronaut that we looked up to, like after realizing what he's done and hearing his story.
Yeah, no doubt. So you're obviously pretty interested in space stuff.
Yeah.
Like I've seen you post about it.
Yeah.
When me and Chris went and got dinner that one night, you were talking about a bunch of space stuff too.
Yeah.
So I get the vibe that that's like a big interest of yours too.
It's always been, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, what a good topic for you to make a film about. But it is pretty crazy because it's like I've never even heard of this guy.
Yeah.
Nobody's heard of this guy. When did he go to space?
He went to space in, I think it was 83.
Ah.
Yeah.
It's like,
and then he had a few missions after that too, so it was 81 maybe, or 83, I forget, one of those years. It's been a while since.
So it's been like 30 years.
Yeah.
Wild. So you got accepted to a few short film festivals.
After creating that film, yeah. It was like, we wrote the script. The thing is, I can't really say we wrote the script because everything was based off of his life and what he told us. So I like to say that we just organize all of these things that he gave us and all this information into the script. And then from there we like started the pre-production process and launched a Kickstarter and casted all the actors and all that stuff. Which like from the first draft to shooting was like, I think 5 months, maybe 4 months. And we were working on it like every other day. It was like this was our thing. Like we were like, if we're gonna make a short film, we're gonna put everything into it and pour ourselves into it, or else it's not worth it. And so we kind of just like, we went head first. We realized if we have this access and we're able to get all this information and to have like that connection with the source, with the direct source, we better make this great, and we better really like take advantage of this opportunity and learn from him and make him proud in the end, hopefully. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when's your short film coming out?
So the film has been just like in the festival market for the past couple months. It played in Denver and then at SCAD, which is in Savannah, Georgia. It premiered in Rhode Island at their international film festival there, and then it's kind of just been living at a few different festivals. I think the next year we're gonna release it to the public, just after all of like the whole festival circuit is done. But the most like fascinating thing that's happened with this film was that we got the opportunity to screen this film at the Smithsonian Museum in Washington. And after we got accepted, I kind of did some more research, and we realized that Guyan's astronaut suit that he went to space in was at the same museum that our film was screening at. So it was kind of like a full circle moment for us that everything kind of just like, I don't know, it was just one of those moments that I was like, wow, I don't know. Either this is like a coincidence or like this was meant to be. I don't know.
Yeah, dude, I was hoping you were gonna bring that up. Yeah. I was worried you were gonna just like glaze over it, but there's no way that's a coincidence. Like, I don't even believe in coincidences that big.
No.
Sometimes coincidences are like, oh, weird. Like I saw this like same sign a day ago somewhere else. Yeah. But like that's way too crazy. I don't know if that makes me like. Does that mean I believe in God? I don't know. I don't even know what that means really, but.
Yeah, it was just inspiring from like having that initial spark of an idea to discovering the story and then to finally like in the end being able to have that home for the film in the same under the same roof as his actual astronaut suit was being showcased at. It was just like, I don't know, it was like such an inspiring moment. Although I wasn't able to go there personally, I had a project come up, so I wasn't able to go. But the director Sagi was able to go, and he sent me some photos, obviously. But it was, yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those moments that I was like, this is what it's like. Like this is why we do this as creators. This is one of those moments, one of those like special moments that just like validates why you're in this crazy industry in the first place.
Yeah, no
It's for
doubt.
those like for that smile. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh man, I honestly like I've told you this, I've told Chris it, I tell like all my friends who are kind of working in your field this, but I've become so fascinated with your world more recently in the last couple years, and so I just have a few questions that are kind of more related to that.
Yeah.
But for you coming up, you grew up kind of making videos and shooting a lot of photography and
Hmm.
messing around with cameras in all different kinds of ways and being on set. So I guess for everyone listening, there's a whole bunch of different roles on set. There's a director, there's a producer, there's audio people, there's assistants of all different sorts,
Hmm.
and there's the DP, who's the person who holds the camera. Literally, like if you're shooting a movie, there would be the person holding the big $100,000 camera that's shooting the shot. And so that's what you do.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that that's all you do. I know you're like a well-rounded person, but that's what you're doing right now, and you're on a professional level. So,
Yeah.
what made you decide to kind of choose that avenue?
Well, I volunteered on in high school. I volunteered on a feature film that I was shooting in London called Tapped Out, and that was like an MMA movie with like Anderson Silva and some pretty big names associated to it. But I just did that because like I found like a post. My dad found a posting on Kijiji, of all places. Like it was like Hollywood movie shooting in London, Ontario, and I was like whatever, like Hollywood movie, like it's a Kijiji posting, whatever. But I guess they were so limited on crew and on like extras and all that they like had to resort to putting that posting on Kijiji. So my dad found it, and then I just like, went to set as like an extra, and from that experience, I like got involved with the crew. I got to know everyone because I was so fascinated in it, and from that experience, I realized kind of what the role of a cinematographer was, and that actually it was the cinematographer who's not only in control and who's responsible for shooting the project like visually with the camera, but he's also developing the entire look for the film. So uh, he's taking the idea from the director, and he's deciding what camera he wants to shoot on. He's deciding what lenses he wants to shoot on, and different lenses have different effects. Like one lens could have more contrast than the other. One lens could have more distortion than the other. Another lens could just change the look for the entire film completely differently. So it's like I realized that was one asset that he was, or one responsibility that the cinematographer had. And then beyond that, the cinematographer is also responsible for the lighting. And for anyone that has like a photography background, um, you would know how like fundamental and crucial the lighting is in a scene. So being able to not only be in charge of that, but also like be able to like create the look for that, and learn like which like lighting sources you want to use and how you want to use them. It's just like this whole rabbit hole that you end up going into, and it's, yeah, I don't know, it's so fascinating. And after that experience, I realized like how much creativity there is in cinematography, and how much, yeah, how much involvement you have in the final image of the film. It's like a purely technical role, so you have to be experienced beyond your years, even sometimes, to figure out what you want to do, how you want to apply that look, if it's even fitting for that scene. Yeah, it's super interesting,
Cool.
and I feel like it's one of those roles that you're constantly learning, and you will constantly be learning. It's like it's a it's a career that you're going to be learning for the rest of your life and evolving for the rest of your life, unless if you don't, you end up just plateauing, I think.
Yeah, and becoming irrelevant because
Yeah.
things are always going to be changing.
Totally.
With the way that images are absorbed and everything, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. That's a cool response to hear. Because I know other people who are they're doing a lot more directing, and they like had their heart set on directing as soon as they were. It seems to be a common theme, you know. You might have taken a little bit of a different approach, but people will just become a videographer and they'll do things like events or weddings or just basically shooting and editing smaller projects, and then they'll get bigger projects and realize, oh shit, I need to like specialize.
Right.
And then I know so many people who are just like had their heart set on directing, and they have like this totally different approach to it. I wish I could remember their responses, but I guess everyone just has their niche of what they know they're more interested in learning about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Like I there was this analogy that I would explain to my friends that didn't realize or didn't know what my work was, and I think it was like a director is the architect of a house. He creates the structure of the film of the house, right? He creates the entire framework, how he wants it, what type of house he wants. If he wants it to be like 1 story, 2 story, if he wants a basement, whatever it is. But that initial idea of the project, like what he wants, is the director's responsibility above other things. Like that's the main thing. But then a cinematographer will come in and will start questioning that or contributing to that and being like, what color of walls do you want? What types of like windows do you want for natural light to come in? Like how can I shape this environment and contribute to your initial idea of making this house to evolve it into like a visual thing. I don't know if that was the best analogy, but
I think I get what you mean.
yeah.
So when it comes to being a freelancer,
Yeah.
you've really been a freelancer since you were done school, right?
Yeah.
How do you like that?
I was a freelancer in school as well.
So I guess that's all you've ever known. So
yeah, I mean, like in high school, I worked at Little Caesars. Shout out Little Caesars.
Okay, so we can compare it to Little Caesars at least.
yeah, so like, I mean, that was an important thing for me was to have a part-time job in school at the time in high school and like know what that's like. And I'm very happy that I had that. And like I wasn't able obviously to freelance in high school. Like not everyone is able to do that. But through that experience, I was able to buy my first camera and create my own first short film. And then after that, I was like fortunate enough to just be able to freelance like head first, going into university, which has been like a total blessing. And yeah, it's kind of like besides that Little Caesars experience, it's all that I know.
Yeah.
And because of that, I've tried to write down everything that I learn and apply it to the future and constantly try to evolve by those experiences. Yeah.
So you enjoy it though, being able to kind of pick when you work and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's scary at times because being a cinematographer, you're always like on someone else's call. So it's usually like the director or producer will have a project and then they'll call you on it. So you can't really create your own work. You're always dependent on someone else's project, which is a bit scary sometimes because maybe you won't get that call that month or that week, and then you're sort of out of work. So it's whenever those projects come and you align with that director or the producer at that given time for that given project. That's when you get the work. So before that, I was kind of like directing and shooting and all these things, and I was creating my own projects. So I was able to, if I didn't have work, I was able to like pitch some stuff and do that. But now that I'm just doing cinematography, it's a bit scarier because I'm not really creating my own projects. I'm like building other projects that come my way. Yeah.
Fair enough. You're waiting for them to kind of find you.
Yeah.
So these days, are you doing more like commercial type projects? I think you were saying that more. Do you do indie stuff sometimes?
Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, fairly often. I think you said you still do it.
Yeah.
What do you prefer?
I mean, like I've always been interested in the branded side and being able to work with a brand, find like what visual style they have, under their branding. Some companies that I worked with like didn't even have that figured out yet. So it was interesting, like being able to work with those companies and trying to figure that out for them, and like yeah, and kind of like build their brand visually. Um, it was like a challenge originally, but from like those beginnings, I was able to apply that. Now it's like working with just as a cinematographer, not a director, um, into like those projects and be like, what is the style of this project and this brand, and how are we gonna apply it, and like even like push that brand's visual style even further than what from the stuff that they've done in the past. Um, yeah, I don't know. What was your question again?
I think you answered it pretty well there. I don't even remember what my
Oh, it was
question
like,
was.
do I do commercials mostly? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Commercials or indie work. Which ones do you prefer?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in the branded side, and that's kind of the opportunities that I've been given in the past few years. But I've also done my own short films, and then worked on some other people's short films and features. Um, but yeah, commercials has always been like my interest, and then now I think I want to be dividing it between like commercials and narrative work, and potentially even like longer format work, like ideally a TV series or a feature film. Okay. I think that's like the next 3 to 5 year plan.
Cool. Stepping it up a little bit.
Yeah, and also I think like television right now, and basically due to like all the streaming platforms, is such an interesting space to work in terms of like storytelling, because you have so much time to develop a story, not only like visually but also in terms of narratively with the story. Like people now will watch a 10 episode series in one sitting sometimes, and like
unfortunately, but yeah, that's what humans are like. Or
fortunately,
these days.
like for creatives, because
no, you're right.
You would never. I don't know. Like I always thought it was uncalled for people. Well, it still is uncalled for people to watch an 8-hour film. So if you translate that to like from a series to a film, you would never watch an 8-hour film in theaters, but people somehow still watch an 8-hour series like in one sitting. Like that's not uncommon now. And now being able to have something like a structure like that and build a story and a narrative that is so spread out, you have so much time to work with like the visual aspect, the story aspect, and really evolve these characters. It's such a fascinating thing. And that's kind of like the next territory that I want to go into.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like with current commercials current projects that I'm working on, I have like a minute and a half to develop like a story or a visual style, but that's like the total opposite, is having a month or a year or 2 years to develop that visual style. It's like that's completely opposite from. I have some experience in that world, but it's from the commercial side, it's completely different than that. So it's always been something that fascinated me, and I hope to dive into that world sometime soon.
Cool. So that's the goal.
That's the goal, yeah.
Neat. So what's inspiring you these days in terms of like cinematography? I don't know, anything, art direction. What's inspiring you into kind of what you want to do and things that you are doing?
Yeah, I mean, what's inspiring me is like, I think the long format thing right now is really inspiring me. Seeing like these super successful TV shows coming out that are made independently and then sold to big distributors. I think it's like it's such a fascinating world, and it's evolving so much in the past year to even the past like 3 years to even like 5 years. I remember like going to New York for the first time and seeing this like big vending machine that was all red, and it was like we were just driving to New York, and it was at a gas station, and then it said like Netflix on it. This is before Netflix was like a streaming platform. I remember this vividly. And you would go to the vending machine that had a selection of movies, and you would rent your film like through this vending machine and get the DVD, and then you would just return it to that vending machine. So they were already starting to like push outside of like the Rogers Video or Blockbuster, that Blockbuster framework.
Whoa.
Yeah, and would have these like vending machines in these remote locations, so
that's
people
crazy.
could watch these movies. Yeah, so they already had that model in place, and then like started going into streaming platforms. But I remember that moment vividly, like seeing that box, and it's crazy to see that that was not that long ago, and how far that the long format world has changed, and like even like in the next 5 years, how much it's going to change. I think that's like the most fascinating thing for me right now, um, and with the with the resurgence of all these like streaming platforms, there's only going to be so many more that come to the table. Like Disney's going to launch their new platform. I don't know if you heard of that.
I did hear about
Yeah,
that.
and a bunch of other people are starting to jump on that ship. So I think it's an exciting time for creatives that are interested in that world. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a crazy era that we live in right now.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called. It might be called Moore's Law. Have you heard of Moore's Law?
Sounds familiar.
Okay. But it's something like every 2 years technology doubles.
Right.
So like if you look at that on a chart of like all of 1901 all the way to like 2018, that just means we're at this point where things are exponentially growing. Like AI exists.
Yeah.
So it'll only take 2 years for AI to be double as good as it is now. Like things are just changing really fast right now, and they're always going to be changing faster than ever.
Totally.
So it's just like a world where it's like you always got to be adapting.
Yeah.
Like really, you're going to have to be adaptive in for the rest of your life if you want to like live in the world that we live in now.
For sure.
It's just a crazy thought, but that's cool that you're kind of already approaching it in that way.
Yeah, I mean, like the way I approach commercials is the same thing. There's always been like a standard model for commercials that was like that like high key bright commercial. Like think of like that like Kellogg's cereal commercial. Like just like growing up, I would see those all the time. And then I think when I started out in film, I was doing like these branded commercials. So they were like, there was always a story. It was always like having one person as the lead, and then the brand would just be the one that's sponsoring that or would somehow be integrated within that. But it would never disrupt that creator's story or that creator's life. And that's kind of how I got into the commercials in the first place, was these documentaries or these short films about these people, and somehow with this brand intertwined throughout all of that. But that's kind of been my approach with commercials, was always trying to push the envelope and change the way that commercials are seen on like a wide scale. And I've been fortunate enough to work on those projects right now. And I think the commercial world is also changing in that avenue. So it's interesting. Like the long format world is changing, commercial world is changing. I think music videos are changing a lot now. But I think there's a lot of things changing, and it's super exciting to be a creative between all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A large part too is I think I was super fortunate to grow up in the time that I did, because motion picture like cinematography has changed like dramatically over the past 10 years. Like 10 years ago, it was standard to shoot on 35 millimeter film, and the Alexa just came out in the past, I don't know, I think almost 10 years now, if not 10 years. And that's the standard camera to shoot on is the Alexa. The Red 1 came out also within my lifetime. But if I was born like 10 years prior, or even like 15 years prior or whatever, I think I would have had a harder start in the film industry. But based off of that like digital evolution, I was able to jump on earlier and create that content at a lower cost. And I can only see like the effects that's already making for younger filmmakers that are just getting into it, and what that's going to continue doing in the future. Yeah. There's
Cool.
like content creators out there right now that are shooting with iPhones, that are shooting with like these little cameras and creating amazing stuff, and YouTubers that are just blowing up. But it's super inspiring to see like that anyone can be a creator, and anyone can be a creative if they really apply their mind to it.
Definitely. That's the crazy thing about right now.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking to a couple of my friends who are videographers and just telling them about some projects that I want to do, just some smaller things, some things that I might do for my website. And I was basically saying, like, I need a good camera.
Yeah.
So what do you think I should get? Ideally, I don't want to spend a ton because this is not going to be my life. You know, it's just like a side thing that I want to work on. and my phone was. This is literally when I was on a trip to LA with Chris, and my phone had no service like all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need a new phone. Like, and then I would talk to him about cameras, and he'd be like, dude, why don't you just get a new iPhone?
Right.
They shoot 4K video.
Yeah.
That's literally going to be good enough for anything you need. Download this one app that allows you to adjust the aperture and everything else, and then you'll be fine. That's literally as good as most DSLRs that you're going to get, unless you wanted to buy like a GH5 or something.
Right.
So that's what I did.
Got a new phone.
And I needed a new phone anyways, and it costed me like a small amount of money in comparison to what I would have spent. And that's the world we live in right now. It's like so accessible. You just have to be willing to like create. You don't have to be you don't have to be like privileged enough to have like $50,000 to buy a camera.
Totally. Like that's the interesting thing about being a creator now, is that there's no excuses. Anyone can do it, and everyone has started to do it. So it's trying to figure out what your voice is. How are you going to create your own work, your own body of work, and then just going out and doing it? Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that's still different largely different between like DSLRs or point and shoots or whatever is like the lensing. Like iPhone with like any cell phone, I think they haven't really figured out the lens aspect, and lenses are so fundamental and crucial to building your visual style and to really elevate your photography. So I think that's still one thing that's above everything else.
Yeah, you're right.
But still, you can still create some amazing stuff.
Yeah. And you're right. That was one thing that Chris said too, though. He was like, you should maybe buy a lens kit if you want to do more serious stuff.
Right.
Because I guess you can even buy decent lens kits. They're still just like cheap iPhone lens kits. But you know, compared to the average camera.
For sure.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I think that's a pretty good mark to cut this off on.
Yeah.
That's about 50 minutes long. So
cool.
Sweet.
Something else I wanted to say.
Yeah?
Yeah. I guess it was on the note of like evolving as a creative. Recently, I like sat down with myself and I wrote down every flaw that I saw in myself.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me this when we were out for dinner.
Yeah. It was like, I don't know, I think one of my fears as a creative, and because we're in this rapidly changing time, is that you always have to be developing and changing and morphing with whatever's happening at that time, and evolving that as well, like evolving your industry, evolving you as a creative. So one of my biggest fears is plateauing and kind of not evolving. And I had a realization like one day randomly, I was like, I'm just going to write down literally all of my flaws, anything that comes to mind. And it's fascinating because for the first 5 to 10 are super hard to write. But then after you get over that, you let your ego down. You let all of these things down, that your entire guard down. And you start breaking down from the little things to the big things, how the things that you want to change about yourself, or that you want to improve on, or the things that you dislike, you start realizing kind of what things link to others and what you can do to like self-improve and build from that. But it was an interesting exercise that I think I want to continue doing in the future and try to help myself evolve, not only as like a creative, but also as a person.
Cool. Yeah, dude, I rant about this all the time, but fostering self-awareness is literally like the best thing you can do.
Totally.
Because when you're self-aware, you're aware, it's just, you're awakened to everything that you're doing. You don't just do things on autopilot anymore.
Yeah.
But it takes so much vulnerability, and you have to really drop your ego and just be so real with yourself.
Totally.
And I love that, though. There's so much freedom in doing that kind of thing.
Totally. And it's hard as a creative, or as like even a business person, or any being anyone. It's hard to drop that guard down, because you want to think of yourself as the best version of yourself always, or as like you always want to have at least some ego, or at least have like some positivity going about yourself, that you're great at something. But it's stepping back from that and breaking down every single wall that you have and really chipping away at your character. It's like, I don't know, it's super inspiring to do that, and I think everyone should do it.
Dude, it's so freeing.
Yeah.
Honestly, so my very last episode, this will be episode 13 when I post it.
Yeah.
That last one was episode 12. But a few of my friends who I had episodes with and other people had recommended it to me. They're like, why don't you do an episode where you kind of follow up on all these things that you mention in all these other episodes and explain why you're doing a mindfulness podcast and why you like are into mindfulness and you actually dive into it. And I was really reluctant to do it because I was like, then I have all my secrets are out there, you know? Not that I like have, that's not even the best way to word it, but I just didn't want to be vulnerable like that. And I was just sat down one day and just went on a rant. I was at my dad's house this week and I just went on a rant. I was like, yeah, this is why I'm into mindfulness, because I was like super depressed a few years ago. And this is why I'm doing this kind of thing, because I was like so shitty in all these different areas. And I basically did what you did and on a podcast and like shared it with all my friends. And I posted that and I just had this giant sigh of relief. And I was like, oh my God, this feels good. I have like nothing to hide anymore, you know? It's a good feeling when you like just it's basically self-acceptance. It's like,
totally.
I'm just a normal human with all these flaws just like everyone else.
And this is how I can like improve on myself too and make myself even better.
Yeah. And that's really the only way you can improve, is when you like accept that you're like a flawed being, you know?
Totally. And everyone is flawed. I think like maybe what stemmed that like from the original source of that is being in a relationship. You have to commit so much time and so much energy to this other person, and it's such an amazing feeling to find someone like that you're able to do that with. But through that experience, you're able to realize through that other person sometimes how different you guys are or how like you are, and they can also awaken you to like how different you are or what your qualities are that should be changed. It's super interesting.
For sure. Having another person who's that close to you, that's a good way to do it, because they obviously know. It's like we all have our blind spots. Yeah. You know?
You don't even realize it.
And like, you don't realize it, but they probably do.
Yeah.
I have that written down. It's something that I kind of revisit often in my mind, is we all have our blind spots. And I'm so tempted to go to all my close friends and be like, dude, what are my blind spots?
Yeah.
You guys never tell me. Like, I actually want to know. Like, where I'm shitty in some way or another, just tell me. Then I can understand it and get over it.
Totally.
You know? Anyways.
Yeah.
I'll cut it here.
Cool.
Sweet. Thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening, everyone.